hello. I'm recording this. It's not actually Christmas Day, but it probably won't get published till Christmas. That title is correct, and I'll just tell you. The reason that is possible is because I am located in southwestern North Dakota. So we're going to hit Montana and South Dakota as well. Of course, right now we're hitting North Dakota. So, little round trip. It got dark a little quicker than expected. I was slow getting started. I'd actually talked myself out of this trip because it was cold. But then I decided to do it anyway. This here, by the way, this is Griffin, North Dakota, which won't appear on most maps because there isn't much there. Nobody lives there. So I'm going to take you to the highlights. The real highlight of this trip, of course, is going to be Medicine Rock State Park in Montana. So I am headed west right now on Highway 12. As I said, we just passed Griffin, North Dakota. We are headed toward Rame, North Dakota. One other thing about a lot of these towns here is they were actually settled. Excuse me, I might be losing my voice. I don't know. These were actually settled thanks to railroad action. In fact, when I get to Baker, Montana, there's a lot of railroad going on there. Kind of interesting country to run railroad through. Here it's reasonably level. You have some buttes, but you just go around them. But there is a river in the way, and then, of course, the Badlands right around Marmarth. You'll find when you look at the trains, yes, I'm doing this bullfrog style, so I am switching shots quite a lot. Sorry about that. I thought I was done editing, and I had about 10 seconds of blank space there that confused me, so I had to go back in and move all the clips over about 10 seconds worth. So anyway, I totally forgot what I was saying. Okay, bullfrog style. So I'm doing this bullfrog style. I am editing a lot out of this trip. I may recycle the footage later as a driving video, but I'd actually like to do it again. There's a bit in South Dakota and in Montana I would like to repeat. I just also want, I'll tell you this story later. Right here on your right, we're looking at Rame, North Dakota. This is another railroad town. I have been told, although I don't know this is a fact, that it's the highest elevation of any town in North Dakota at 3,192 feet, or 973 meters, for those of you who use a more civilized measurement system. Kind of shrinking. It's, just a story of a lot of prairie towns, including my own. My own is shrinking too. It's just not as small as Rame. Anyway, to continue on with my story. Oh, by the way, you'll see a train up here. I don't know if you could tell there, but when the train decides to park at Rame, it blocks the whole entrance to the city. And yeah, we call them cities in North Dakota. You will also notice on this train, because I was talking about how awkward it was building railroad through here, that it has an engine at one end and two engines at the other end. I guess they need that for climbing up out of the Badlands, or, I don't know, maybe slowing down, going down into them. It's apparently quite a steep grade for a train. And trains move a lot of stuff. You won't find passenger rail here. This is all 100% freight rail, but whatever. And I see some more video editing. This may be like seeing a sausage get made, but apparently I have left the audio turned on my dash cam footage, so I've had to go through and edit again. Wow. So this is what I get for editing the footage together last night. So I had to edit that audio out. It's, I had the iPad hooked up to my speakers in the car, and I was running music for part of the trip, and then I was listening to The Economist for part of the trip. In either case, it's copyrighted, and YouTube will get me if I use it, so I didn't. Over to your left here, you see a wind farm. It's not huge, but it's a wind farm. We're looking at alternative energy here. There's talk of building another wind farm closer to where I live, actually. In fact, right now on Main Street, they have a storefront, which I'm not sure why, but it's there. And so I'm hoping to see... I don't like the looks of windmills, I'll just be honest. The lights on them at night flashing, and, the fact that they break up the natural landscape. But so do power lines, and heck, I'm getting this to you because of power lines and phone lines and whatnot. So, compromises have to be made, and I see a lot more future in renewable resources. So, and we have wind to spare here in North Dakota, so why not take advantage of it? I mean, there's some potential for solar in this state, but not as much as wind. I mean, I can't even keep the solar powered Christmas lights on my front steps lit all night, so, you know. But anyway, the solution for energy is a mix of all the above. So, anyway, headed west here, continuing west, we're going into the Badlands now. I think maybe this is a good point to mention. I had a local person actually criticize me for unsafe driving, for recording this while driving. I explained to her, well, I have a dash cam. I'm not really recording anything. She says, yeah, but it takes a lot of work to talk, and you're not paying attention to the road. And anyway, so just FYI, I am drinking rum right now. I am also not behind the wheel of a car. I record my audio for this, for the most part, at home in the comfort of my own house. You will hear some live audio later on when I'm walking around with the camcorder at Medicine Rocks, but yeah, I don't talk to the camera and drive. And remember all these statistics and everything while I'm driving. I like to look up details and research. In fact, I do have some not subscripts, some good gravy. I shouldn't do this late at night. Some references, anyway, for you will pop up later on in the video. I've taken you through Rame. I've taken you through Marmarth. I almost cut this bit of footage out, but I actually had a comment from another friend that I showed them some pictures of Medicine Rocks. Actually, she lives in, well, I won't say where, but somewhere in the southeast United States. And saw the Medicine Rocks pictures and thought it was the Badlands. And I said, no, not the Badlands. So this is Badlands. So I'm keeping this clip in here at length because it gives you, and her especially, a rough view of what Badlands are. When we get to Medicine Rock, that's actually rock. What you're looking at here is not rock. This is actually dirt. There's clay in it and whatever. And there is usually something harder in it, especially on top, that keeps it from wearing away as fast as the surrounding landscape. But it's actually a really cool landscape. I love coming over to Marmarth. It's a beautiful setting. And this is really interesting when it's not winter and we're not in a drought and everything is really green. Except for the Badlands part is not green, of course. So, yeah, so this is the Badlands. So back when they formed, the Badlands were kind of a wet, swampy place. And, excuse me, sediment collected here. And actually to the north, I think I've taken you there. There's some cypress stump fossils and so on. But anyway, about 1 million years ago, we had an ice age, and that changed how a lot of the rivers flowed. And then a little Missouri River came along after that, which what it did is it carved into the earth, and some layers were easier to carve than others, and that's why you'll see odd pillars and stuff, some of these buttes and so on. So anyway, I need to do a full video on just the Badlands, that I didn't write down my research, so what you heard there was mostly from memory. And I probably got some geology wrong. I will say this is a good area for finding dinosaur fossils. Marmarth is known for that. There have actually been 1 or 2 movies, believe it or not, filmed in Marmarth. Well, I shouldn't say filmed in Marmarth, in which Marmarth was used as a location. I mean, how do you film a video in Marmarth? There's not really much there. But anyway, so yeah, that's making me think I need to do a trip. By the way, we just crossed the Little Missouri River, speak of the devil. But it's making me think we really need to do a trip up to the Badlands and take a tour around the North and the South unit. So that's, well, tell you, well, no, that's more of a summer thing, come to think of it. Um, there's the old depot from Marmouth. Yes, at one time they got passenger rail. There was a big roundhouse here. Nowadays, Marmouth is a lot of abandoned houses, a lot of issues, basically abandoned Main Street. A lot of history here, but it is not the town it was as the railroad disappeared. And it's very isolated, I guess you could say. It's just kind of a different world from the rest of North Dakota. But I like it. I like coming there. So I think I need to do. I did a tour. I drove you around in another video, but I think I need to come back and do a tour where I actually walk around Marmouth and really show it to you in depth. That sounds like a plan to me. How about you? Well, you're not the one driving. You're just riding along. So jump forward. We're still on Highway 12. Somewhere right around here, I could have turned south and gone to Camp Crook. Here, if I would have turned north on that road, which was to your right, I would have gone up Highway 16, which is a very interesting trip through the Badlands. In fact, I think I need to upload that. I've used it as backdrop for book reviews, but I almost think I need to upload it and do a driving video at some point. So from here on, you're going to see a lot of skipping. I wanted you to see the Montana state line, which isn't that special, but I wanted you to see it. And then we'll jump straight into Baker. But, we're coming, you've still got some of that Badlands formation here. You'll see a little bit more of it for a bit, but eventually it's going to disappear. Around the Badlands. Now, you just think about this, though. Use your imagination. You're in a wagon train. You're heading west. You're going across the prairie. Prairie is reasonably easy. I mean, western North Dakota isn't as flat as eastern North Dakota, but still not bad. The buttes are there, but you can go around them. And then you get into this kind of country. Or what you just saw over there in Marmouth. And remember, Highway 12 wasn't there. You can see why they called it the Badlands. We are now in Montana. We passed the sign and I forgot to remark on it. But, we really live in a very different world. What this is to us now is totally different from what it was back then. Because of the roads. One thing that's been going on here is a little bit of oil activity. It has slowed down, especially the drilling part. They're still pumping wells that were drilled. But the oil here is expensive to extract. So until the oil prices come down, it's unlikely that you'll see, or I'm sorry, did I say come down? Until the oil prices go back up, it's unlikely we're going to see much drilling here. But it'll be back. So I fast forwarded a bit. It's just prairie, and we're trying to get to the punchline. So we're in Baker, Montana. Baker is a town of about, exactly 1,741 people. It is also the Fallon County seat. It was along the transcontinental line of the Milwaukee Road. Actually, my town and Rame and Marmouth were also along that same rail line. The railroad actually made a lake here to supply steam locomotives, which makes me wonder, you're going to see a lake that's been drained. Temporarily, they're planning to bring it back, but it makes me wonder if that was the lake that the railroad made. The lake itself, actually, the reason they decided to drain it, there was a tornado came through Baker, and the tornado dumped a lot of junk into that lake, and they, windows, doors, pieces of houses, and so on. So they thought, it's time to get that out and clean it up properly. And they're also going to make the lake a little bit deeper, but you can't see it yet. So right here, I'm pulling up on Main Street Baker. Not a red light, just a blinker. Four-way red blinker. So even during the height of the oil boom, that's all they needed in Baker. This isn't like Watford City, another place that I've taken you. So I stopped here. Actually, in all honesty, I mentioned I'm drinking some rum. I bought it in this little pull-off here. Not at the furniture store, of course, but yeah, this is when I bought it. So, anyway, Baker has a pretty decent main street. I think their main street is better than my town's main street, but my town has better business overall, if that makes sense. Baker's okay, you know, it's comparable to where I live. 1,741 people. I wrote down the elevation for some reason, so I might as well share it. Elevation of 2,936 feet, or 895 meters, for those who like a more civilized measuring system. They had some growth due to oil. I guess for a while housing was short, but that's no longer the case. And now I guess it's hard to sell houses. But what I'm told is some pipelines are going to run near Baker, and that's going to change Baker, increase the population, and it's going to make it harder to buy a house. It'll be easier to sell one, but it's going to limit the housing options in Baker. So that'll be interesting to see if that comes to fruition. What is it? The Keystone Pipeline, and there's one other pipeline, but it's not coming to me right now. But anyway, you know, they'll get a massive incursion during the building, and but then a lot of those people will leave, but they'll maintain a certain number of people just to, you know, maintain the pipeline pretty much. Too much else to say. 140 kids in their high school. My town has about 125. Yeah, I do like their grocery store here. Now, my town has bumped up its grocery store game quite a bit. But, in all honesty, my grocery store is nicer looking, but this one still has bigger selection. In fact, for the party I was at tonight, I actually picked up one of the ingredients here on this little trip because I couldn't find it where I live. If you care, it was star anise. Needed it to make a pear compote. So, yeah, I made pear compote this afternoon. Now, for the next leg of the journey, I continued south, but I think you can see over top of this store, across the parking lot from the grocery store, what my problem was. Sun. I was headed south into the sun, so out of consideration for you, I have omitted quite a large chunk of that because, ew, just doesn't make good video. Now, what I did up here, I pulled straight across the highway, right into the parking lot of the bank, so I could go step out of the car and photograph this lake. And this lake is one of the things I first noticed the very first time I came to Marmarth, because I've actually been this way. I came this way in 2003 on the way to my brother's wedding in Tucson, Arizona. I decided to take the scenic route. I wasn't living where I do now at the time. And so I came through Baker and Ekalaka. And this lake was full of water then. So empty now, but presumably to be filled up. But I saw digging equipment out there, so they're digging it up and, like I said, making it deeper. It looked like they were just making channels, so I'm not sure how all that works. You know, it's not a natural lake anyway, so somebody smarter than me can figure it out. So now we are headed south. So we're headed south here, parallel to the lake for a while. If you look at a map of Baker, you'll see that the lake actually takes up quite a large chunk of Baker, and I would assume that the homes that are on shorefront are more expensive. I don't know that for a fact, but I would just assume it. And when the lake was drained, I'll bet that those houses were not very nice places to be. Just because all the rotting stuff on the bottom of a lake that's suddenly exposed to oxygen and can rot really quickly doesn't smell so nice. So, anyway, we're continuing south. And you can see some ground effect snow there. That sort of blows across the street, the highway. That can form drifts. It didn't on this day, but you see that when the weather's colder like this, because as you'll see when I get out of the car, it's only about 14 degrees Fahrenheit here. So pretty cold. It's, what is that, negative 10 Celsius? I can't remember for sure. But not a lot of snow on the ground, honestly. Very disappointing for this time of year. I'd like a little bit more snow. We need the moisture desperately. And it makes the cold a lot easier to stand. So I think you can see how the sun affected the view on my southward trip. So I did a major crop job here. We are coming up on Medicine Rock State Park right here through the magic of editing. It is, I want to say 20 some miles from Baker down to Medicine Rocks. Medicine Rocks is a lot closer to Ekalaka, which is why Ekalaka claims it and Baker does not. I thought I would give you the full effect of pulling in. I will point out I'm about to do something you shouldn't do. There's a stop sign up here where you stop and pay. It's entirely honor system, unless the park ranger happens in. But I wanted to get in and take pictures, so I paid on the way out. I know you're supposed to pay on the way in, but I wanted to get pictures while there was daylight, and I didn't want to waste my time there. And don't worry, I really did pay, and you'll see video evidence of that. Because I know, since I am putting this on YouTube, this is how people get caught not paying. So, promise, Rangers of Montana, I will pay. But you can see it's a single lane road going in. It's not paved. And it's forested. I mean, we're in the prairie. This is kind of these, 330 acres here are, 320 acres are kind of a unique little ecosystem in the prairie. It's kind of like an island. You find species living here that you don't find elsewhere in the prairie. Just kind of a, just kind of a neat location. Speaking in terms of geology and in terms of ecology. The trees here are mostly ponderosa pine. That just is kind of a western thing. You will also see briefly in one of my shots that they have done some thinning here because they're trying to get it back. For a while, it was kind of the stylish thing to fight fires whenever you saw them. But fire is actually a natural part of western forests. What it does is it clears out the undergrowth and keeps fires from getting into the upper stories of the trees. It opens up pine cones. It makes it easier for new trees to get started and so on. So naturally, forests in an area like this are more, the trees are just further apart. But when you fight fires, of course, they get closer together. So now that they understand that, they're going in and cutting the trees back and thinning them. Now, at first I was almost going to park here, but then I thought, no, I feel like there's a better spot further on, which there is. In the snow, I wasn't recognizing that. So you'll see it. What they'll do with the logs then is they will burn them at some point. Just, in a drought year like this, they would have cut the trees, but they wouldn't have burned them and you will get a fire because it's a horrible year for burning. Winter is actually a popular time for the burning. Now you can see somebody came in ahead of me. There are tracks, but they must have left. So I don't know if it was the park ranger or another weird visitor like me that came on a really miserable cold day. Pretty day, just very cold day. So, I don't know. But you also saw some of the sandstone spires. A lot of this, for the first bit, is actually going to be narration that I took while walking around. But then after you get a chance to really appreciate what you're looking at, I'm going to jump in over top of the video and explain a little bit of the geology and how this came to be, and maybe a little bit of history to go with it as well. Okay, I'm recording this. I just wanted you to see what the temperature is. So 14 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 10 Celsius. So just for you, well, and a little bit for me, I'm going for a walk thing. So it's cold out, but this is Medicine Rocks. I'm on a monopod, so hopefully this will be reasonably upright as I just slowly pan around on foot. So where do we go first? Now that looks fairly impressive. And what is it? It is a crack through the rocks. Okay, more than a crack, it's a hole. In fact, I could stand upright. Yeah, I could stand upright inside that one. It's my personal preference not to startle a mountain lion in there, but that is the giant hole. I'm hoping if I'm talking here, if there's one in there, he hears me and is running away right now. You can see this is very soft rock. It's fossilized sandstone, and people over the years have carved it. And it's just kind of interesting. That's kind of a human trait. You'll find Native American carvings here that are very ancient and very modern. I love Sheila carving. And just a little bit of scenery. While I'm standing here, just let's take in a little bit of the view. You can see quite a long ways here. So just a little bit more. Probably comes as no surprise, this area was considered sacred by the native tribes, which in the 1800s would have been the Sioux and the Northern Cheyenne. You're looking at spires that are maybe as much as 200 feet wide and as high as 80 feet tall. There's arches here. You saw a cave. Just kind of a wild place. In fact, in 1883, Teddy Roosevelt visited there, and his description was it as fantastically beautiful a place as I have ever seen. As you may or may not know, Teddy Roosevelt spent quite a lot of time in North Dakota, at least in the summer. I guess he didn't spend too many winters here. You know, he's a rich guy playing at being a cowboy. The tribes, of course, would come here looking for medicinal plants for vision quests, or looking, you know, these were good high, you saw the view back there. These are good high spots for spotting herds of bison, for hunting and so on. So camping as they would travel between the Black Hills and the Yellowstone River. You know, it's just kind of a neat spot. In fact, you'll find tribal petroglyphs around the place. There are people now documenting those and trying to preserve them. There's signs about not touching the carvings and so on, and definitely not allowed to carve in the rock. You'll see signatures of cowpunchers, art, graffiti, of course. I showed you the Sheila graffiti. And this kind of Swiss cheese stuff is all natural here. But actually, Lewis and Clark, they carved over some Native American petroglyphs to leave their own little bit of graffiti. So you're probably wondering how this all formed. And I will tell you the short version. These are fossilized sand dunes. There used to be an ocean here. Not right here, but really close to here. Now, it was a few years ago. Well, looks like I'm not the only one here, but I think my companion here has 4 feet rather than my 2, and probably doesn't slip on the snow as much. So the story of Medicine Rock State Park actually begins about 61 million years ago. At the time, if you can imagine, this was a swampy, forested region, and it was by an inland sea. At that time, there was slow-moving rivers, and they're full of silt, and they deposited sandbars. Yeah, you're looking at sandbars. These were compacted over time and eventually formed sandstone. In fact, you can probably find bits and pieces of the Rocky Mountains here. Erosion, of course, would have carried off all the other materials. There's one of the piles of logs I was telling you about from thinning the forest. Erosion carried off the other materials, but it left the harder stuff, the sandstone. The sandstone, as you saw with the close-ups, is pretty soft, and so that's been carved by wind and water and ice. That's a rabbit. He's probably carved it a little too, but he doesn't leave graffiti. There's a little close-up, and there's where he lives. Nice spot, actually. Very clever for a bunny. But, and then there's some holes and tunnels due to the organic material that was trapped in the rock, which, of course, subsequently rotted away.
So, I just climbed up a really steep hill, and I see the car over there. I'll have to take the long way around to get to it, but I hope you enjoyed this little trip to Medicine Rock, and I think I have time to continue on. And I'm sorry about my voice. When it's cold like this, my lips go numb and I sound like I'm drunk, but I promise it's been a while since I've had any. But anyway, Ekalaka next, probably from the comfort of the car.
Okay, ironically, as I record the narration part of this video, I am actually drinking a little bit of alcoholic beverage, which, if you hear it in my voice, it's not because I'm numb from cold. But while I was out there, the temperature did drop.
One thing I'll promise you,
so
I will be back here in the summer when it's warmer. My lips don't go numb,
I guess doesn't make a difference.
and my batteries don't go dead because of the cold. So we'll see you then.
Yeah. I could spend a lot more time there in the summer when it's warm, but taking my gloves on and off to operate the camera I was starting to not feel my hands anymore. And as you have probably experienced with electronics, they don't care for the cold. So my batteries were all dying, which magically came back to life in the warm car. Funny about that. So I decided to voyage just via car a little further into the park just to show you it. I'll have to figure out some narration to fill this here because I forgot I had this part in here and didn't write a script for it. But I will tell you that it's a fairly primitive park. There's no full-time ranger there, as you saw. You're basically on the honor system. Day visitors pay $6, and I don't remember the other prices. $6 is the one I paid, of course. And I guess a ranger comes every day or every couple of days. I don't know. There are 12 camping spots in the park. They're primitive camping spots. So don't look for a water hookup or an electrical hookup or anything. Don't even expect a shower here. There's a couple outhouses around. That's about it. You'll find there is a water pump, hand pump, right at the entrance. But yeah, no electricity or any lights or anything in this park. I mean, when they say primitive, it's a primitive park. And it is pretty far out there. I mean, for me, this is a day trip. For most people in Montana, this is pretty far away. But what a jumping off point. I mean, you're close to South Dakota. You're very close to the Black Hills. You're close to the Cave Hills. You're close to Wyoming, particularly Devil's Tower. In fact, I'll come back to that later, but that has something to do with the highway I was on. You're also fairly close to the North Dakota Badlands. So I was not sure what that was going to be as I just looked up there. I thought, oh, what if something's drifted shut, or what if that's not really a road and it just looks like a road and I'm confused because of the snow. So I decided to play it safe. But anyway, this is definitely a park worth visiting. Staying a night. And like I said, it's a good jumping off point for a lot of other neat places to visit. Now, you might be watching this and think it's kind of weird that I visited, well, on a day it was minus 14 degrees. I actually had a really good reason. I've been here when it's nice. I've been here several times when it's nice. I've never been here in the snow. In fact, the only time they'll close this is when the road is not passable. So I thought, let's do something different. So I decided to come in the snow. Now, admittedly, I got cold, especially operating the camera. I think if I'd just been walking around and kept my gloves on, I could have stayed warm a lot longer. And but I've gotten a whole new look at the park now, thanks to this little bit of snow, than I've ever had before. I've been there in the fall, I've been there in the spring, I've been there in the summer, but never during the winter. So I actually kind of think it would be fun to come back here and visit, if there's a lot of snow on the ground. And maybe I'll do that, I don't know. But yeah, glad I did this trip, and doing this channel just kind of gave me an extra excuse to do it. And I'm actually really enjoying rewatching this footage because I'm noticing things that I don't notice when I drive. By the way, that we're just passing the rock now that had the big cave in it. I did not go into that cave. I tried to climb up to it, but with the electronics I was carrying and just the slipperiness of the snow, I thought, oh, you're going to break either electronics or yourself, so I chose not to. And yeah, there could have been a mountain lion hiding in there, but I kind of doubt it. They are around here, by the way. I've never seen one, but they are, in fact, around this area. You'll find them in the Badlands mostly. Up, there's a ponderosa pine forest just a short ways north of my house. You'll find them there. Excuse me. You won't find them in town. I'd be really surprised if they ever found one in town. They're not social creatures, really. And that's why I was making the noise at the opening to the cave before I went in, because I was hoping if there was one there, he'd just be like, yeah, I'm leaving. I don't want to mess with you. Well, not that they'd really be scared of me, because if a mountain lion wants to eat me, he's going to eat me, and there's not much I can do about it. I'll beat you with my camcorder. No. And mountain lion's just going to laugh at me. So, kind of reminds me of that old joke about guys out hunting. And he's walking in the woods and he sees a bear. And bear rears up and roar. And the guy kind of panics and he backs away and he trips over a root and his gun goes flying. And he's laying there and the bear is over top of him. And the guy puts his hands together and says, please God, make this bear a Christian. And the bear pauses, puts his paws together and says, for this meal which I am about to receive, I am truly thankful. So, there you go. I threw a joke in. So, anyway, coming back to the entrance. Now, you might remember when I pulled in, I just want to emphasize this for any Montana Rangers out there. You might remember that when I pulled in, I did not pay. It wasn't because I didn't intend to pay. It's because, as you can see, I was losing daylight. And I wanted to... Sorry, I think I am losing my voice. I wanted to make sure that I would have daylight to do my photography. Now, partly that's my fault. I didn't have it because, like I said, it was cold. I'm like, oh, I don't want to go out. And then as I was sitting at home, I'm like, oh, you got to go out. You've been waiting forever because you've been getting cabin fever because you haven't gone anywhere. So I went out just a couple hours later than planned. But I did pay. And I'll give you a closer view of the costs to visit here and everything, just so you get an idea how much it costs to visit Medicine Rock State Park, which, by the way, I would encourage you to do if you ever get the chance. So, I think I successfully filled the driving out of Medicine Rock State Park portion of this video. And now, it is time for the Let's Pay Our Bill portion of the video. $6, by the way. Okay, just in case anybody noticed me going right through the stop sign, this is just showing that I paid when I came out because I wanted to make sure I had daylight to do the photography. So, and I didn't have $6, so I paid him $20, so I hope it's okay. So I'm now that I've paid, pulling out of Medicine Rock State Park back into State Route 7. I'm going to head south to Ekalaka. Now, I'll confess something to you. I like Ekalaka. Culturally, I don't know if I'd be a good fit, but as far as a town, it's a very unique town, as you're about to see. I don't know if I've mentioned this yet, but this is one of the towns that never had rail service. So Baker, Marmarth, town I live in, Rame, all those had rail service. And were placed where they are largely because of rail. Now you can see the kind of country we're dealing with around Ekalaka. It's more rugged than it was around Baker. In fact, one of the things that struck me when I first visited this area, well over a decade, is as I went south and I look at the buttes, I don't know if they're higher or what, but they were all covered on the top by forest. And further to the north, you didn't see that. So that's just kind of a neat little elevation thing. I don't know if that's just because they're getting a little more moisture up there or what exactly is the reason, but it's a thing. So we're going to come up over this rise here, and it really is actually 11 miles from Medicine Rock to Ekalaka. I just chose to edit out a couple of miles of prairie through the magic of video to keep this video, well, I guess it is an hour and 5 minutes long, but all right, so we're coming down into Ekalaka. Now, Ekalaka, go to my correct notes here. Make sure you know I'm using notes, so I wiggle the paper in front of the microphone. 332 people in Ekalaka, and it is the Carter County seat. Now, because of its location, it does have a lot more business than you might expect. And by the way, we will turn on that road when I leave Ekalaka, but let's talk Ekalaka for now. Now, kind of cool, it was named for a Sioux girl. Sioux as in the tribe, not the woman's name. She married a gentleman that was a scout, actually, at one time, named David Harrison Russell. He ended up having a ranch right around here somewhere, and the town was actually created on the edge of his ranch, and we're driving down the main street of that town. Apparently a man named Carter, wonder why it's called Carter County, bogged down in the mud in the spring of 1885 and decided to open a saloon. And in his immortal words, any place in Montana is a good place to open a saloon. And so he opened a saloon. Ekalaka eventually became a trade center for ranchers. Houses were actually put up there for freight workers and hunters who ran the local freight line. Now remember, I said rail never came here. By the way, that's the Carter County Courthouse. Rail never came here. So when I say freight, I don't mean rail freight. What I'm actually referring to is teams of horses. So think stagecoach and the like. Ekalaka itself has an elevation of 3,425 feet, or 1,044 meters if you prefer a more civilized measurement system. That to your left was the elementary school. I believe they have replaced it, although I couldn't find it, so maybe it's still in use, I don't know. This is a stop sign, and that's a church. In fact, Ekalaka has a lot of churches, which kind of surprises me. I don't know if they're a more religious town or what's going on, but yeah. If I remember right, there's even a Mormon church here. But I can't say that for 100% certain. But what I'm going up to here actually is I'm headed to the school. Ekalaka has a very large school district as in terms of the amount of land it covers. And there aren't a whole lot of other towns, but it doesn't have a lot of kids. This is the school. The blue building, I'm guessing, is a gymnasium. I don't even know that. I've never been in the school, so I'm sort of at a loss here. One thing I do know is this is the high school here. This half-buried building. A high school for 34 kids in grades 9 through 12. Now you're probably saying, ooh, that's really small. Do they really even need a school? Except, where else are they going to go? I have taught in schools larger than that don't have as nice of a building as that. So there is that. But yeah, there's not a lot of kids. 77 kids, grades K through 8. It's a small school. There's just no two ways about it. And what do you do? I mean, we look at that and we say, ooh, what a waste of money. Wouldn't it be more efficient to bus them somewhere else? But how much time do we have these kids spend on the bus? How far are we willing to bus them? Do we perhaps build dormitories so they can stay overnight somewhere? And then who watches the dormitories? So, yeah, that's a difficulty these rural schools face. Now, you may have noticed I just passed a blue sign with an H. This is another thing that comes up in rural communities. Medical care. So, Ekalaka has a hospital. It's the... trying to remember now. I didn't write this one down. I think it's the Dahl Memorial Hospital, DAHL. I'll double check when we get there, because I think I filmed the sign. But anyway, when you're in a rural community like this and you're very isolated, what do you do for medical care? Now, for non-emergency care, maybe you drive to, I don't know where they go in Montana, Billings, Missoula, probably Miles City or Glendive, maybe Baker. But what if you need more immediate care? Or, it is expensive to travel, just a clinic for your regular care. So that's why it's important to have emergency care available. And there it is on your left. That is the back side, the emergency entrance of the hospital. Now what I chose to do is use some camcorder footage and inject it here. I'm guessing that's an ambulance garage, although it's kind of short for that. But there is the emergency entrance to the hospital. It doesn't look very hospital-y-ish. But again, what do you do? And that's one of my concerns. You always hear from some people that, well, free market will solve these problems. Well, no, it won't. Okay, I think I remembered wrong, because that looks like Carter County Public Health, not Dahl Memorial Hospital. So now I'm wondering where the Dahl Memorial Hospital is. But anyway, a place like this is going to have a hard time in the free market keeping a hospital open, and yet I would argue that they need some kind of emergency care, and that's where maybe the free market falls down. And I know the true libertarians will say, well, it's these people's choice for living here. And to which I would say, yeah, but how you end up in a place is often a lot more complicated. Most of us can't just pick up and go. And there are a lot of reasons to stay in a place. So you need to have medical care. Post office there. I used to be part of a group on Flickr back when I was active there that liked photographs of post offices. And I was going to stop and take a picture of it, but then I didn't. I don't know why. Oh, I know why. Because the light was going and I wanted to get as far as I could while I still had light. So, I'm about to make a decision up here that it turned out okay. I could have gone back north on Highway 7 the way I came in, or do something new. So the area I think I mentioned, but the area around Ekalaka is forested. It's actually a neat place to explore. In fact, that's one more area I've realized I really need to spend more time exploring. So I'm probably going to go down there once or twice this summer and wander around. I guess there's all kinds of hiking and recreational opportunities down here. So I want to take advantage of them. Now, years ago, I came through Ekalaka on the way to a wedding. I don't remember spending much time there. I think I swooped through really quickly. Probably I went down the main street and so on. Because I've always been into that. But then I continued on this road. This is State Highway, let me find the reference here. 323. All right, so, Route 323. So, I think I mentioned earlier in the video that I came this way a long time ago when I'm on my way to my brother's wedding in Tucson, Arizona. And I plan, I'm not super detailed planner, but I do like to plan and know roughly what I'm doing. So I guess I like to have an outline, kind of like I have for this little talk. And so my outline said, hey, you got to hit Devil's Tower. And the way to hit it, of course, was to go down 323. Go to Alzada, Wyoming, and then from Alzada, Wyoming, down to Hewlett, Wyoming, and from Hewlett, Wyoming, over to Devil's Tower. Well, one thing I didn't understand from the map is that 323 was not paved for about 60 or 70 miles. Who knew, right? I didn't. So the road started out like this. I don't remember exactly where it turned to not paved, but somewhere after all the trees, because yes, we're about to go through forest again. Somewhere after the forest, suddenly the pavement stopped. And I'm like, oh God, how far am I going to have to backtrack? Well, I didn't. So I just kept going and kept going and kept going. I even, if I remember, I had one low water crossing, which was a little scary in the Camry. That was my first time I'd ever done one. I definitely got out, looked first. And yes, a low water crossing is exactly what it sounds like. Highway 16 used to have 2 of them. Sadly, all of this was pre-dash cam. But anyway, apparently around, 2010 or so, they paved the way from Alzada up to Ekalaka. One of the articles that I've referenced below has information about that. But, so I got to drive it when it was still not paved. When you get to Alzada, there is not much there. It was kind of interesting. I stopped at a gas station in Alzada and got to talking that you could get some, like a burger there too. So I was talking to the lady that ran the place, and she was talking about how they run a business where they get hunters in, and she was talking about how the kids have to grow up faster because they have more responsibility than city kids, which, may be true, maybe not. We always like to idealize wherever it is we are. But anyway, then she mentioned about schooling. So they had a one-room school there. I guess the state of Wyoming, or is she still in Montana? No, I'm pretty sure Alzada's in Wyoming. Anyway, there was a whole controversy over where should the kids. Maybe her ranch was in Montana. That might have been it. Anyway, the whole controversy over where the kids should go to school. They wanted to close down that one-room school, and the local people wanted it kept open because where are we going to send our little kids? And she had a point because it was quite a long ways over to Hewlett from there. And I did see Devil's Tower. I didn't get the best photograph of it then, but I have since been to Devil's Tower several times. Again, pre-dash cam. So we'll have to do that again. I need to do that again because I want to walk around it and take more pictures. But anyway, somewhere in this country it turned not paved. This looks pretty new here, so maybe it was already gravel. It wasn't too far after I went over and came out of the forest. I have time-lapsed a bit. I was looking for a specific road, but I couldn't remember what it's called. I know on the South Dakota side, it's State Highway 20. On the Montana side, I was hoping for a sign that said Camp Crook, South Dakota. So I found it. In fact, right here is where I found it. So you see a couple deer there. Well, more than a couple. Nobody came charging out to commit suicide with the aid of my car, so that was good. But this is the road, whatever it's called. And you can see I was losing my light. I think the light lasted long enough for me to get what I want to finish up this voyage. But yeah, I didn't. I was a little sad that the light disappeared that quickly, because there was more I wanted to do with this voyage. So that's okay. I probably, as long as this has gotten, it's probably just as well that I ran out of footage or ran out of light, because if I'd done the full trip I wanted, we would have had to hit Marmarth, we would have had to hit Rame, we would have had to hit Buffalo, we would have had to hit Camp Crook, would have had to walk around all of them, and I probably would have stopped more places, taken pictures. I was going to walk around Ekalaka, so maybe it's just as well. I can focus better. So yeah, we go through some forest. There was a neat cabin somewhere. That might have been it, actually. Neat cabin there. Some ranches in amongst the trees. And it was just a long stretch of gravel over to Camp Crook. Camp Crook is right on the border. It's almost in Montana. And so yeah, by the end of this voyage, like I said in the title, we will have visited 3 states. Now, I'm continuing to run the dash cam here, even though this would be an appropriate point to jump forward, because we're going to go around a tight turn. But what's kind of wild is you can see there's quite a view from up here. Yeah, I mean, that's just a hint of it, but you can see quite a long ways from up here. So definitely this guy needs to get back up there with a camera and more light. I'm thinking this is a good morning voyage here. And get some pictures of all that. Because it's really pretty. And I enjoy, it's hard for me to talk myself into getting out. I lean more toward being a homebody. And yet, once I get out, I enjoy being out. So I guess I'm a little introverted and I like my comforts of home, but at the same time, there's a world out there. This guy, I saw him coming. This is a wide load, and I just thought, yeah, better if I just get out of his way. See? I mean, probably I could have kept going, but I thought, yeah, I get what I get. So this road, whatever it's called, continues west in this vein for quite a while. You will see very shortly that the dash cam was failing me. When I watch Bullfrog's videos and he drives at night, of course you lose a lot, but he gets much better night shots than I do. Now I think part of that has to do with where he drives. He drives in more cities with more streetlights and everything. But, even driving in cities, like I had footage. I kept it running the whole way home. So I had footage in Buffalo and my town and Ludlow. And yeah, you really can't make much out. Now I did get out of the car in Buffalo and to do some footage with the camcorder. That was okay. So I don't know, maybe Bullfrog doesn't use a dash cam. Maybe he uses a regular camcorder. This caught my eye just because it was blinking. And is this where the state line sign was? No, it isn't. Somewhere here I included a little bit of footage that just had the sign saying, hey, state line, out here on a middle of nowhere. But this is really rugged country, and I want you to keep in mind, any of these kids living out here, where are they going to school? How long are they riding the bus? Does the bus even come to their house? These are realities that I think when Washington, D.C. talks about education, they talk about things like vouchers and competition in schools, because that seems to be the thing, especially with our religious right-wing dominionist that's in charge of the Department of Education right now. It's a different world out here. How are you going to set up competing schools here? How are you going to find teachers to staff them? Who wants to live out here to teach here? And I don't think they really care. And disagree with me if you want on my assessment of Betsy DeVos. I mean, that was clearly a political statement. But it's not a political statement to say that this is very rural and very isolated, and solutions that work in the city that these think tanks come up with may not necessarily work out here, because it is a different reality. And I have gotten into that argument with people and been told, well, if they don't like it, they can just move. And again, how do you move 400 cattle? So we're coming into Camp Crook, South Dakota, which is roughly where I'm going to end my voyage. Now, because it's Christmas, I'm going to include one extra little piece. Camp Crook, South Dakota is actually in Harding County, South Dakota. It's a town of 63 people. It's never been large. I think at its peak it was about 200 people. The Harding County Fair is actually held in Camp Crook, which is interesting because it is really far away. I mean, not that Buffalo's any great shakes either, but I mean, it is really far away. We joke in my town that we're not at the edge of the earth, but you can see it from here. These towns like Camp Crook and Ekalaka really are at the edge of the earth. Okay, so I think, yeah, here I am just pulling down Main Street. I was actually pleasantly surprised. I've been here before, but in the day, you can't always tell what businesses are functioning. I was surprised, there's 2 bars, there's a cafe, there's places to eat here. A laundromat I saw. Not lots and lots of businesses, but at least a few businesses, which for a town of 63, I guess they're not doing too badly. And then I continued on. I was hoping the dash cam would show the school pretty well. Yes, Camp Crook has a school. They educate grades K through 6, and then they go to high school in Buffalo, South Dakota. Buffalo's another very small, very rural district. And they run an elementary here, and they run another one up in Ludlow, which we'll have to see on another trip because it got dark. Yep, there's the school. So I'm not sure how many kids are in it. It's not very many. And I know the idea gets tossed around from time to time down there of closing either this one or Ludlow or both down and just busing the kids all the way to Buffalo. Because it is expensive to maintain a rural campus. And who knows, that may be a choice that Buffalo has to make someday. Just facing financial realities. But again, then you have kids on the bus forever. And so if a kid has to get up and ride 2 hours on the bus or more to get to school, are they really going to be putting in peak performance at that school? And I would argue no, because I have kids where that is their reality. So that was kind of a depressing end to this story. I'm going to change over now to all Christmassy and joyous. The rest of this voyage is on Highway 20 from Camp Crook to Buffalo. It's a long route, and it's dark, and you can't see anything. So rather than spend the next 20 minutes or so of this, I'll edit, and there is the Harding County Courthouse, where they every year Local businesses display Christmas trees in the window. Or volunteers or groups or whatever. Excuse me. So I thought that was kind of cool. I thought the flashing stars were kind of tacky, but other than that, very cool. So happy holidays to all of you. I thank you for watching. And I promise there is more to come. I have lots to explore and lots to do yet. So happy holidays.